All right, turkeys, welcome back. After the beat, Luke Thomas, Danny Segura, Brian Campbell, and Chuck Minden Hall. We have taken your tweets using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. Thank you for everyone who has submitted some. The thing is, I saw people are doing now, you know what, it's clever, but I'm on to their ruse. They're putting in really good questions, and then inside the tweet, they're putting in like a picture to promote their own podcast.
Luke's onto that.
No, yeah, come on. I'm like the UFC. There's no free advertising here. You got to pay me. Okay. So with that being said, thank you to everyone who sent one. Let's get these going. Is anyone concerned, Danny Segura, that Conor will stranglehold the division if he wins the title again?
Oh.
We haven't even talked about that. What a great question that is. Are you concerned if he goes in there and beats Khabib, he's just going to sit on it again?
I haven't even contemplated
Exactly.
because I'm just so worried about that fight
It is funny that that has not really
Is that
been brought
not
up.
a great... I saw that, I was like, holy shit, that is a great question.
Watch the belt be not defended again for another 20 pay-per-views.
I mean,
Isn't that crazy?
That's the end of the light- honestly, that'd be the end of the lightweight division.
it's mutiny.
Because all these
I
top
mean,
contenders have to make some sort of money, right? They can't go on another year without fighting.
Bro.
So then it's just going to happen what happened to the light heavyweight division, where you're just going to get a bunch of contenders that are all coming off losses.
I have contemplated just a little
that is
bit
scary.
if Conor wins. I've only contemplated in terms of like how crazy will this thing get? Like how crazy will the next step be? But I haven't actually thought about it in terms of like zeroing in on
How do you escalate inside that division past Khabib Nurmagomedov?
GSP is the only answer.
Correct.
Yeah,
that
that's
is
about
it.
right.
And
Or
they've
if
already
Diaz
said-
goes through Poirier, obviously you have the
Diaz
you have
one is the X factor, but if he loses, it kind of changes. Now, if he wins, okay, then you're in some pretty safe territory. Can you imagine Nate Diaz, UFC lightweight champ? That'd be crazy.
2019.
But to the point about the question, we haven't even entertained. What is Conor going to do if he gets the belt? It is crazy to think about. It could be another, even if it doesn't
How
stagnate.
can we know? I mean,
This is impossible.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you have to begin to consider how is he going to treat it? How has he treated every belt he's ever had? He just kind of waits and sits on it.
Maybe Floyd Mayweather gets a title shot, and then we get the rematch inside of the cage.
Oh, spare me.
Here's what I think. A possible fight is the GSP fight. They can do another rematch, depending on how things go. The Diaz one is out there. And the other one is he sits on it and he fights Paulie Malignaggi in boxing.
Don't forget about one more thing.
Yeah.
If he knocks out Khabib and ends the unbeaten streak and comes back like nothing changed after 2 years and is Superman again and has sorcerer magic, what's going to stop him from calling out the winner of Woodley Till and just being like,
That's
I'm
true.
insane.
Absolutely nothing.
that's true.
Yeah.
Dude, he will be, if Conor McGregor beats Khabib Nurmagomedov in a fashion, let's say, relatively similar to how he beat Jose Aldo, maybe not 13 seconds, but let's say inside the first round, or something like that. I am telling you, you want to talk about a hot hand in mixed martial arts? One of the issues that's different than boxing is Floyd had been boxing since he was in the single digits, right? And was from a family of boxers. And this was a craft he had been handed down as part of his lineage. So by the time he's in his 20s, yes, you can get better, but you basically are who you are, right? You just have to figure out a game plan and stay in shape and that kind of a thing. In MMA, the best practices are constantly evolving. So to take 2 years off in MMA is significantly more risky than taking 2 years off in boxing, especially when you're already at the top of it, especially against a guy who's supposed to be, in some ways, your kryptonite. If he comes back under those considerations and wins, I'm telling you, he will be like the juggernaut, bitch. Unstoppable.
True or false? If Conor McGregor wins, in 2019, there will be an interim lightweight title.
100%.
1,000,000%. Maybe before the end of 2018.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Actually, there will be before the end of 2018.
I'm telling
if it's
you,
Ferguson.
that question was like
so
a Pandora's box in my mind on the train right up here.
It
I
is
was like,
funny that I have not really heard anybody discussing that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean,
The
we're
thing
so
we criticize the most, we've like overlooked. It's like,
All right, we got to move along. Final thoughts. Anything on there?
No.
Okay.
That's it. Just.
All right. Do you feel the MMA media, Brian, can do a better job in challenging Dana White on inconsistent decisions? For example, Jason Hai's ref shoving incident seems insignificant compared to Conor's dolly throwing circus, but got released. And is the fear of relation, I think he means retaliation, a factor here?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
We can do a better job. And, I personally at news conferences after fights have thrown out the questions. On conference calls, I've thrown out the hard questions. Dana obviously is very well trained at dodging those, and you hope that somebody else has your back is going to follow up and ask the same question again. But have we seen our brethren in the business get their things pulled? Absolutely we have. I don't think that ever stops. So I said yes and yes because there's a line. I wish people would go closer to that line regularly. But yeah, I do believe there's a line in this society of MMA journalism that, you know, you push too far, you're gone.
What do you think, Chuck? Can we do a better job? Why isn't there more to this person's question challenging of Dana White on his beliefs?
I mean, I feel like there has been, but I feel like how long can you harp on it? Somebody at some point could do a piece, I guess, where you put a lot of this together so that you could point out the full context of why and how, you know, some of his, selective discipline here and all this. But we kind of talked about this a little last week. They've gotten a little lax in general about just, punishments for outside the, cage stuff. And I don't know. I feel like we're no longer part of that. What do they call it? The conduct?
Code of conduct, yeah.
Code of conduct. I feel like that's sort of a thing that's been pushed aside for the time being. So I don't know, but I mean, ultimately, yes. I mean, it's completely inconsistent. You know, one guy does something, it's the worst. He's disgusted and he means it. The next thing Conor does this is disgusting, but he doesn't. They're cool in the end because Conor obviously means a lot more to the UFC than that. I mean, he's a fight promoter, so it's like I think it's always going to come down. It's going to be just different circumstances for different fighters. I mean,
at least they're consistent on these really questionable decisions lately, where it begins to build a transparency of they don't care. So the questions are being asked. Do I wish people asked them more? I guess maybe, but I don't know. What else can we? I mean, at every given point on a podcast or a story, I'm relating these same concerns.
During the UFC's rise, when I was working at Bloody Elbow, this is all we did. This is all we focused in on, and the audience at that time did not care. Fact of the matter, they didn't care.
That's true. That's a good point.
And we were banging our heads against the wall. We were saying, how could you possibly just ignore this? They just didn't care. Now that has changed. I think they do care now.
Back then, Dana could get by with anything, though.
He had total carte blanche. He lied on the record about Tito pulling out of the Chuck fight on the Ultimate Fighter, and then when people called him on lying on the record, he said, "So what?" And then the audience backed him up. So if you're wondering why, it's because we've done it. Partly it's just fatigue. Partly I think people just expect, what's he going to say? He's going to lie on the record because he didn't care. And why do we care anymore? You know why Conor got off, because Conor makes a lot of money, right? So there's just this fatigue issue. It's just weird how the audience now has totally turned. I'll give them credit. They came around, albeit to the point where I'm now too tired to give an F. But that part has changed. And if you saw MMA, 10 years ago, 2008, the audience could not possibly have cared less that there was any kind of contradiction. So why? Well, I don't know.
I guess I wish just people pushed it a little bit more.
And the MMA media could obviously do a better job.
Yeah, the MMA media could do a better job in many different areas. But I think we're improving, right?
There's a reason they kind of shut down. Remember the scrums? I mean, those are the times I felt like people could casually approach these things, kind of access Dana's spontaneous brain and these things. He doesn't put himself in those positions anymore. And to interrupt, to take a piece of information that, let's talk about Jason Hyde during a press conference where guys are on a panel and you're supposed to be talking about their fights, or you feel
Makes
like
no
you're
sense.
Yeah, it's weird to be like, Overeem's up here. Hey, let's talk about your inconsistencies with Jason Hyde.
It just doesn't seem appropriate to bring up stuff like that when you're they're up there for a different purpose.
And let's be real about it, right? If you're an MMA or media member, I've never been the guy. Occasionally I've gotten a scoop about a fight or someone's injured, but you can get a ton of retweets and a ton of attention by breaking fight scoops, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just I don't want to do it. So if you're talking to Dana and you can get a scoop versus you can call him on a contradiction that people just don't care about, including him, what are you probably going to do? Chances are you're going to look for the scoop.
But that's why I guess I referenced the line. There's a line where you're going to push it too far and there's consequences.
Yeah.
And you got your point across,
Right. This is why you should listen to all kinds of different media. The kinds who are credentialed, the kinds who aren't. Mm-hmm. The kinds who go to shows, the kinds who don't. Because you're going to get a wide variety of perspectives, and all of them have a role to play. Next. All right, Chuck. What's the dumbest suggestion you've ever heard about improving the MMA world?
Jesus. Well, God. I mean, you have to sift through a lot of dumb things. First.
All right, Danny. Boy, Danny had his hand right.
Man.
Same day weigh-ins.
Thank you.
That is the dumbest shit you can throw out there.
Yeah.
I disagree. I completely disagree.
Iglesia.
Come on. I mean,
God.
You disagree?
Brian.
I still believe and I said it on here 2 weeks ago, but I still believe the only way to change the problem with weight cutting is move the weigh-in as close to the fight as possible.
You're going to have main events falling out the day of.
You're going to have somebody killed. That's what you're going to do.
I think you're going to remove killings and you're going to retrain fighters.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I think.
LOL.
No,
Are you kidding me?
There's been already plenty of wrestlers that died.
I don't want to
wrestling is same day.
I don't want to weigh in the morning of, and that's the only weigh-in. I want more weigh-ins so that we're not caught off guard.
Yes.
You know,
I'd be okay with more weigh-ins so that you know we're not. It's not a mystery come Saturday morning. You know, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday, and Friday. But there's a logistical issue involved there. There's a cost issue involved there. There's a manpower issue involved there. There's a record-keeping issue involved there. There's just a lot of extra headaches. I do think that would be fine if it has a trail of. You know,
I mean, if the question is you get one weigh-in and it's either Friday morning or Saturday, I don't want it on Saturday. I don't want to return to that. I just want the final weigh-in to be right before you walk out there, and it's
Fighters take risks. Period. They will take risks. They will say, yeah, how much weight can I really cut without damaging my brain? On a same-day weigh-in, and they will get that line wrong, and they will something terrible will happen.
Promotionally, that would be terrible. I mean, shout out to Ivan Menjivar, who told me years ago.
Wouldn't it be Ivan Menjivar?
Menjivar, yeah. Well, you know, I'm here in English channel, so that I say Segura, not Segura, right?
Yeah.
So he told me before there was even morning weigh-ins, and we just had the ceremonial weigh-ins, and you know this kind of. It was something when somebody says it, you're like, oh yeah, of course. But until then, you know, it's something you don't really contemplate. But he's like, the weigh-ins are so important. That's when you get two guys. The last time they face each other, they look at each other. You know, there's a push or whatever. That's what sells the fights. You look at the weigh-ins and the fans go, okay, these two are fighting. Okay, this looks interesting. This is what I'm paying. The weigh-ins are such a promotional tool. That's why there's such thing as ceremonial weigh-ins today. So he was just telling me that, and that's super important. Same day weigh-ins would get rid of that, and it'll definitely hurt pay-per-views.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah.
Any other dumb ideas?
I'm trying to save lives. Not a big deal. Go ahead.
Any other dumb ideas?
Nothing that springs to mind, man. But I feel like I've heard you hear through the course of time
a lot of
tons of stuff, man. But nothing pops to my mind. Though.
Man, I got so many. I'll throw one more.
Oh, there we go.
Wow.
This guy's his question.
I'm telling you,
Tailor-made.
I get all these suggestions, especially because I read. I have to go through the voicemails now for the end.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you get a lot of those. After the Nate Diaz Conor McGregor fight, there was so many casuals that came in and they just started, throwing their opinions. A lot of them were saying, "Let's just ban takedowns. Let's just ban grappling. This would be MMA more exciting. Let's just have two guys fighting." Be like, yeah, that's called boxing.
Do you guys remember Chuck Norris's World Combat League? So one of the funny things about kickboxing, partly I understand why it's not as popular in the States as it is in Europe. It's not an American phenomenon. So there's that. But the other one that was always interesting is they never knew how to market themselves. So the World Combat League that Chuck Norris did, which is not Glory or something like that. I think Glory is much more savvy. But there was a time when kickboxing would be like, all right, boxing's old and dying. MMA's got bad wrestling. We got the best of both worlds. We have knockouts, not takedowns. And no one ever responded to it. The idea is like, well, let's take MMA and then take the wrestling out of it and it'd be better than MMA. It has never worked, ever.
Well, Glory starts up, they think that, well, people love the stand-up. We're just offering you that. We're going to see basically MMA on the feet, and it just doesn't.
I don't think they market themselves that way.
To an extent, they first did, though. I thought that was, when I talked to them when they first were starting, I think that was part of the process.
They've undergone several leadership transformations.
Yeah.
I think they're a pretty savvy product.
I mean, you look at something like the bare knuckle thing, obviously, and you say, well, it got a pretty nice little reception on the first one. We'll see if it can sustain itself. But I think that it's always adding the new wrinkle, right? Well, we're going back a little bit to our taboo era. You know what I mean? Like, we're taking it back here, and that still speaks to a lot of people, things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything that exists that is kind of it gets sifted out as a novelty at some point. You know what I mean? We may have interest, and then you just go right back to MMA. It's because MMA is all those elements that literally keeps feeding your imagination. It has to be all the elements. All
right, last one, I swear.
Wow.
He's got a lot.
I didn't realize it would set you off like this.
Cruiserweight.
Oh, another terrible idea.
Well, super heavyweight's a horrible idea, too.
That's another bad one.
Use 10 judges and take the 7 worst scores, and judges should sit on volleyball chairs, and what's the other ones we see? 100-point scoring system. There's some other bad ones.
There's some bad ones out there.
I mean, a 10-point boxing scoring system in MMA is a bad idea to begin with, but there's a better...
Right. I would say, lastly, people who want to keep Face the Pain, you are a scourge on humanity, truly. All right, next. Let's see, who wants to jump on this one? With Jon Jones returning to the USADA pool last week, now this was reported by a guy we don't agree on much, but he does great work documenting the work of USADA, who is being tested on what frequencies. The guy goes by the name of Dim Space. So Jon Jones was tested for the first time after about 9 months. This was revealed the last 7 days. What is your take on Jon potentially getting a reduced suspension, especially in the wake of the way Tom Lawler just got treated? So what I'm asking for here is, and this guy's asking for, well, is speculation. Jon Jones not tested for about 9 months, and in the last week he was. What do we make of that? Just random?
That fuels a little conspiracy.
Remember, they still don't have a main event for the New York show. Boy, Jon Jones back at that one.
This is the secret, break glass in case of not,
I'm telling you.
I mean, the way Gustafsson pulled out of 227 with an undisclosed injury, I know it became disclosed after, but
hamstring,
it seemed like and even the coaches' quotes are like, hey, he could have.
Smells like interim title.
He could have fought through it if he had to, but look, why are you going to waste him on that card? I think we're looking at those three names, right? Jones, Cormier, and Gustafsson. We're going to see a combination of two of those three headlining the Garden, and that's great. Any of the combination, by the way, is great, and I'm down with it. But it was a little bit sketchy in that loophole when Brock ahead of 200 was allowed not to be tested. It's a little bit sketchy in general that Jon Jones tested positive more than a year ago, and we still have no resolution, and we're still every day going, when's that USADA hearing for him?
There is no hearing.
And we know what's going to happen here, guys. Wake up. We're just going to get the news from one of our...
So you're confident he'll fight on that 230 card?
He's going to fight in 2018. Can you not smell it right now? One of our friends that break news in this industry is going to have... You're going to see that tweet on your timeline one of these days. It's going to be out there, and it's going to be like, oh, Jon Jones is back? What?
You know what? You need a guy on this panel who has covered boxing the way he has, because you're still optimistic. You're still a fight fan, but at your core, you are a cynical old goat.
And I'm one of the more optimistic boxing people there ever.
Yeah, truly.
We are a beat-down society. But I will tell you this, and I'm not, but what am I optimistic about? I'm optimistic that things are a little bit corrupt and weird, that they're just going to be able to figure out a loophole and get him out of this.
Yeah, good. Good is the answer. MMA needs Jon Jones. Fact, right? He can not like me all he wants. I don't give a fuck. Yeah. MMA needs Jon Jones.
But that falls right into what we were saying before about criticizing Dana. The more you criticize... The end result of our criticism to try to make things fair and just, and federal agents are mad because Conor's flagrant, but he's going to be back in there anyway... I caught that. If you keep pushing it, you're going to lose the fights. So you're right. Fans don't want that. People want Jon Jones. People want Conor.
Yeah, and I will say we're so close to having things almost on at full cylinders again, because if Jon Jones is back, you've got Brock Lesnar and Cormier. You've got Conor back. I mean, all these elements. Nate Diaz, if you want to include him, but it's just like it finally feel like we're kind of, all the guys who should be players in the sport are back into it.
Right.
GSP
I made this point before. Everyone was like, oh, there's no stars in MMA. I'm like, well, okay, there are definitely a dearth of stars. There could be more. But you got to remember, at the time, Conor out, Ronda, WWE, Nate sitting, Jones sitting. There's a lot of guys you're like, if they were just competing once every quarter, you'd feel a lot better.
And GSP kind of sitting.
GSP, same thing, right.
Something happened at that news conference last week. I'm telling you, or before 227, that something just like, you just felt the change. It's not just, hey, Conor's back. You just felt...
It felt like business was picking up.
That hangover post-sale and post-Conor and Ronda leaving, it changed.
Even Nate Diaz complaining. Even Nate Diaz complaining about the whole thing, and he's like, F that, I'm not fighting in that card.
He signed into a fight. All these things we wanted. But about the Jon Jones thing, I don't know what's right. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. It doesn't feel right that he could just come back and claim tainted supplement. He's back. Would I rather have him back than not? Obviously.
You know what it feels like? Great. That's what it feels like.
That's the word you're looking for.
Yeah, the word I was looking for was awesome. Next, please. Okay, which airline?
This is tailor-made for you, isn't it?
Yes. I can answer this question. Now, if you're an MMA media person, the chances you have flown to a terrible location that only Garfield would mail Nurmel to, under the auspices of a dual propeller plane that was probably used for crop dusting by some kind of Croatian farmer, is high. So, with that preamble out of the way, I would say Spirit Airlines is...
I've never flown them.
Absolute worst.
There's an Onion article that was like, Spirit Airlines ready to charge passengers for cabin pressurization. Right? Like,
it wouldn't surprise me.
Like, they want to charge you, like, if you recline, $5. If you have a tray table, $10. To put your bag overhead, $15. So Spirit's bad. I would say people get sized for deals, which I understand. But I'm sorry, Southwest Airlines,
Wow.
I can't stand them. Number one, they have to go to Baltimore, where I just all of a sudden get lice whenever I go there, number one. Number two, all right, yes, it's a direct flight to Vegas, but the problem is, if you're my height, number one, their exit row seats don't recline. But you say, well, what's the big deal? I'm 6'4" 3/4. I cannot fit in your effing chairs. So I have to do the bit where I have to get the early bird check-in. Then I have to go to the front of the counter and pay another $40 so I can be the first 15 to seat. Because if I don't, they're going to let every family in with their effing strollers and dogs.
Us skinny guys will counter and say it's not our fault you got into powerlifting, though.
Okay, the height is the issue. It's not the size, it's the height. My knees touch the chair. What can I do about that? There's nothing. So the point being is, now I have to go to the front so I can get the exit row, but I can't recline on a 5-hour trip. You may or may not have internet on this thing. By the way, we got free snacks that expired in 1967. These were around when Nixon was launching the war on drugs.
Southwest.
It just sucks. So everyone is like, I like the cheap deals. You like your cheap deals. I like boarding in a way that doesn't make me feel like, what's the word I'm looking for? Livestock.
We can't follow that, guys. We can't follow that.
Yes, I would just say Spirit is the worst. And I forgot what airline in Colombia it was. It's a new one.
The Chivas Air?
What?
It's like they call it the Chivas. It's not his real name, but it's like a Chivas.
Maybe they actually, and this got denied. They actually applied, and they were trying to get the seats of the plane. This is in Colombia, removed so passengers could stand.
Yeah.
During the flights, during the.
That's a real thing.
This was only within the country, so it's like an hour flight at most, 40 minutes, because Colombia is very small. And of course, it got denied because I think there's some safety issues with that. But yeah, they want to remove.
Although in fairness, the main Colombian airline, Avianca, is really good.
It's really good. It's amazing.
I think they all
blanket
suck,
and everything.
All airlines suck because even these days.
That's not true.
That's probably not true. But most of the ones that are like our domestic carriers, United, American, and Delta. This basic economy now that you purchase where you cannot pick your seat, everything. It's basically, it's going off the Spirit model where it's becoming a la carte. You can buy what you want. That model sucks, man. I got
to stand by Southwest for a second, though. I mean, you can.
That's actually my favorite.
You can get a bag for free.
Viva Colombia is the airline.
Viva Colombia. Luke, you can get a bag for free at Southwest. You can change your flight without a penalty. You got to really stand by that.
Yeah, that's fine if you're being cramped in the overhead space.
They got that great deals calendar. You can pick your dates.
I really like JetBlue.
JetBlue used to be great.
Virgin used to be good too. I don't know if they're any good. I will say this. Most of your American, and not American Airlines, the brand, but airlines that operate inside the United States as American companies, they're all pretty bad. If you go to like parts of Asia where and I'm not making a call for socialism, but it's just a fact, the airlines that come out of Asia that have government subsidy, right? Because the airlines don't really make money. So the ones that get government subsidy, they're awesome.
Yeah.
They're comfortable, they're modern, they show up on time, they have cabin pressurization for free. They're just way better. Qantas Airlines is another one out of Australia. That's a really good one.
You're going to be flying 15 hours. It better be.
Lufthansa. You ever flown Lufthansa, the German airline? They're pretty good.
Yeah.
Anything
I was trying to think.
Anything not Delta, basically.
Yeah, Delta sucks.
Sorry, it's a fact. By the way, don't fly Southwest. Also, you've seen their safety record? Lucas Middlebrook, who is with Nick Diaz's attorney and now works for Project Spearhead, he is involved, I think, with the union of workers that, I'm not sure what the exact name is, but they're the ones who are the mechanics of the airline mechanic union. And apparently Southwest safety record is a little bit trifling.
That's great. I just booked a couple Southwest flights.
Yeah.
How many viewers and sponsorships did we just lose in this segment? Can we have Danny talk about his favorite bands again?
Touche, salesman. Next. Okay, this was a big deal this week. Why is Brendan Schaub, who he's talking about here, comparing
Brother Association.
Yeah. Yes, this is from the... I didn't even notice that. That is awesome. From the Eskimo Brother Association, why is Brendan Schaub comparing two grown men who have nothing to do with each other? Was it solely because he knows their names? Would give him attention? There's like 4 questions into one there. Why should Nick Newell get a contract because Hardy is a SE person? How it works, Luke. Boy, the Eskimo Brothers, they need to work on their English.
What the hell is it asking here?
Brendan Schaub made a comment this week that it was sort of incomprehensible in his judgment that, it was in the morning report, that the UFC, what does it say about the UFC's preferences, Brian, that they would get behind Greg Hardy, who is A, unproven as a commodity, and B, has a horrible track record, and B, or C rather, they wouldn't get behind Nick Newell, who has a squeaky clean record, is much more proven as a MMA competitor, and has a story that, no, not everyone's a congenital amputee, but man, this is a feel-good story if you can just get behind him.
Yeah.
So what does it say, was his argument, about their preferences that they would do one, not the other?
That feel good doesn't move bigger numbers than thing. This is a business. A, B, this is a dirty business, and C, Hardy has a bigger ceiling both as a fighter and a marketable commodity.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in there?
No. I mean, ultimately, I thought the UFC would get behind him. Just giving him the platform on that Contender Series, I just assumed, honestly, that they were going to give him a bigger push. But I was at a baseball game, and I just realized, I was like, oh, that's going on tonight. And I felt like even the media, like some of the media wasn't even talking about it. It went by so quietly. It just went by so quietly. So I do hear a lot about the Hardy thing, though. So, I know that I know that that's true.
Yeah, it's interesting because Hardy didn't get like a UFC contract. He got a developmental deal. And Dana White said, oh, well, Nick Newell fought and he just didn't make it. You would think, okay, maybe if I want to invest in this guy, maybe I don't get him a UFC contract, but get him a developmental deal.
I don't think he ever wanted in the Nick Newell. I think he didn't want in that business.
Here's the thing. If Nick Newell gets knocked out badly, there's a possibility that Dana gets criticized for putting him in there in that situation. Whereas
I don't buy that.
Whereas Hardy, win or lose, Dana wins. Because there's going to be so many people that want to see him be a fraud and get knocked out. So you'll win.
I don't buy the argument that if Nick Newell had lost, it would have been the travesty in the media, even if it was a vicious KO. I don't buy that.
I'm saying in comparison to Hardy, when you're laying out your pros and cons.
I agree that Hardy has a higher ceiling, higher potential ceiling, which means that there's some room for exploration. But it also could be that he's a dud. Like, you don't know.
Yeah. Also, to be fair, look at the lightweight division. It's not a need of fighters. I mean, we got tons of contenders, right? The lightweight division is probably the best division in the UFC. Look at the heavyweight division. Sure. That needs work. So
the only thing I objected to, the question is fine. The only thing I objected to with the tweet was they're like, I see this in MMA all the time. Somebody will make a comparison, and if there's not a direct relationship between the two figures or two entities, someone goes, why are you comparing the two? They're totally different. Well, that's the whole point of the comparison, is that they are totally different. Yeah. They don't need to be in orbit of each other for that comparison to be meaningful. You're simply looking at two different entities and what their realities speak about the larger preferences happening around them. And this context, a business one, I see this all the time. It's like, what does X have to do with Y? Right, nothing. That's the whole point. We're now trying to understand what that means, that they are so in fact different.
By the way, you'd mentioned, we've covered two of them now. You mentioned Paulie as one of the biggest victims, and then Durandame, but Hardy would also be another name.
I don't buy that.
You don't think so?
The people are angry at him, but he is very savvy on the microphone, at least in terms of just tamping down questions about it. Yet we made this point before, the MMA media are going to ask him a bunch of questions. Every time people keep asking about his domestic violence thing, it's the same reporters over and over again. I got news for you. They're going to stop asking because he's going to give the same.
And yes, ma'aming.
Yes, sir. Well. They're going to stop because how many times can you ask the guy the same effing questions about domestic violence? It just goes away. New ones come in, things might change. If he really blows up and reporters from outside the orbit come in, you might see that. But we just, like, if you see Greg Hardy 5 times and he wins 5 times and nothing's changed in his personal life, for the 5th time, you're like, all right, well, remember when you beat up that lady? Like, it would just be kind of weird. You asked him 4 times already, so.
Well, that's the thing. America loves success stories and second chances. So it's a win-win because you want fans to love and hate him. You're going to get both. Yeah. So it makes too much sense. By the way, you bleeped out that S word but said the F word.
I know.
Love this.
I make no claims about consistency. Let's go next. What keeps you most excited about watching the UFC? I'm feeling a little apathetic and need some motivation.
A lot of this type of thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Look, it's going to happen for anybody. It's going to happen for anybody.
The women's strawweight division keeps me excited because it's the most exciting division in the entire sport.
Why are you
single
trolling?
Women's strawweight match is absolutely hot fire and fantastic. I'm not even fooling around.
Why are you trolling?
I'm not even fooling around. I'm serious. When I look at a card and like Danny said, sometimes you'll see some fights, you go, well, I don't know too much about that guy. I go, oh, 115 women, I'm there. Tell me a 115 big women fight that's let you down. Please, please, you can't do it. Thank you. Point proven. Let's move on to that.
Let's move on.
To answer the question, Danny, I know this is something that we all struggle with.
High-level MMA. I mean, there's nothing like it. We just saw, not so long ago, UFC on Fox 30, right? And man, that card I had gone through the same thing where it was like just going card after card after card, and you're like, oh man, how many horrible fights have I seen? Yeah. But then you get those really good fights. You get that Jose Aldo, Jeremy Stevens. You get that, those really high-level fights in
Poirier Alvarez.
And then you're like, man, this is why.
It feels so different.
It's hard, man. It's hard to overcome the deluge of content. Like there's so much.
Everyone on this panel has a literal financial incentive to care, and even we at times can't care.
And there's been so much. And you cannot help but become somewhat apathetic. But there's something about it when you step back and you say there's a literal dictation of wills. It's the only sport that you get that. You're not going to get in ball sports. It's a literal, and it's stripped down to its essences. And these guys are out there doing this. That I feel like that forever fuels it. You know what I mean? As soon as you make that realization, you see it in a great fight, or you see it in somebody's skill set, it all comes flooding back.
There's a core reason why a lot of us became fans, whether it's connection to the technical element, the violent element. For me, it's always been the promotion, the big fight element, getting two personalities together It's like being in the schoolyard and knowing two guys are going to fight, and you're just, it's sort of that what fuels me to keep coming back, the potential for the next big fight. This guy beat this guy, then he's got to face this guy. It's a drug, man.
It is a drug. It's an absolute drug. I would say a couple things. Number one, if you're just tired of watching fights, stop watching fights.
Yeah.
Take a break. There's nothing wrong with taking a break. Number two, to your point, I think it's excellent. I've just come to the terms, like if you think about the ESPN deal that the UFC's entered, it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, right? The 10 fights that are going to go on ESPN and all the rest go on ESPN Plus. Now, I'm not here to say those ESPN Plus shows won't be as good. Some might even be better. But if you think about it, like the TJ Dillashaw fight, UFC 227, and the one before that, the Cejudo and Johnson fight, it's like all this product has to exist only to make sure that the very high end is still good. Like you need all those other fights, but yes, to sell ads and to put on cards and to whatever, but really it's just to make sure that we have enough that the very high end keeps revolving in the way that it needs to. So really, I just sort of come to terms with the fact that you just need that to have that. And if that's your outlook, then you just...
But there was definitely a time where the percentage between bad MMA and high MMA was quite different.
Right, but also high-level MMA now is better than it ever has been. I know folks don't buy into that, but you know...
But overall...
Yes, there's more. Look, it's not that they couldn't trim the fat and still have the process I'm talking about. I'm just making a general point. Like, you need some of that fluff to enable the possibility of the great stuff later. And then let me do one more, if I may. The last thing I would say on this is, for me personally, you need to fall in love with fighting. A lot of MMA fans, a lot of boxing fans are in love with drama. They're in love with personality. They're in love with the moment that will not last. Those fighters, they will come and go. The fights will come and go, but if you love actual combat, it is much easier to have a sustained path to consistency.